Welcome, everybody, to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. Today's topic is propagating peace. But before we start with that, let's just take a minute to settle in and get ourselves present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it and feel the oxygen coursing through your body, bringing life, bringing vitality, and exhale any tension, any stress in your jaw, in your neck, in your throat, shoulders, back. And let's take another deep breath in. Hold it and just imagine the sparkling of life and energy moving through all your being. And exhale, and let's relax and be present. Let's gently place our palms together. Softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel the tingling in your fingers, the tingling in your palms, and bring yourselves present right here, right now. I want to thank you for joining me this morning. We're in a continuation or an expansion of a crazy time in our history, and in the face of the deep sadness and fear and anger and despair that people are experiencing around the country and around the world in relation to uh, the racial divides that we are all subject to. Um, I want to talk about what it means to propagate peace and how, as spiritually oriented people, we're called to rise to this moment and show up in a way that maybe um, tests our reactivity. So, good morning, Dido. Thank you so much for being here. So, I think as spiritually oriented people, uh, we can we want to be living in. I'm going to speak for myself because I don't want to make any assumptions about anybody that's listening. But for myself, I want to be living in a place of peace and coming from a, a sense of love and connection. And I recognize that there's so much going on right now, so much pain surfacing. It's not that this hasn't been there for forever. It's that this moment in time, these deep divides and separations and inequities are being experienced, hopefully on a level that is going to finally spur some deep and lasting change. And out of this moment of um, pain and uh, out of this moment of pain comes a deeper recognition of this circumstance or this predilection towards separation that we have as humanity had for centuries and centuries, where one people sees itself as separate from another people and allows itself to fall um, into prejudices. And so, propagating peace, how do we do that? One thing that we can do and we're called to do as someone who is spiritually oriented is to root out the fear, because fear is something that holds a notion of separation in place, and or a notion of separation holds fear in place. So what is on the other side of fear is love and connection. And so to be propagating peace as we show up as defenseless. And what I mean by that is not helpless. What I mean by that is without defense, to become present, to be uh, moving through this time of divide by seeking connection and seeking understanding and speaking and being a willingness to really look at our own inner dynamics as we confront the circumstances in the world right now. And I think it's too easy to fall into a conversation of us and them where they are separate from us. In other words, whoever us and them is. Um, in other words, if we can recognize our deep connection with one another, and the fact that oppression in any form is oppression that affects all of us, then perhaps as we recognize that fact, we can cultivate deeper compassion and a willingness to have and find the courage to move into our own um, evolution into a human family. I realize that I'm having a difficult time speaking this today. There's so many thoughts, and I don't want to be I don't want to be talking about this in an abstract, and yet that well there are, given that I don't want to be talking about it in an abstract, there are so many things that we can do. And one thing that we can do to educate ourselves, and for people of all colors, for people in all circumstance, that there's a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, and that's Ibram X, the letter X for the middle name, and Kendi, Kendi. And apparently it's sold out right now, but it is available on Audible. And if we can enter into a national and international dialogue, we have the possibility to be transforming the world, not just with crimes against Black people through police officers, but even beyond that. And not to say that that's not a priority at the moment, but let's move into educating ourselves, re-educating ourselves, reorienting ourselves, bringing ourselves into awareness and connection with one another on a level that allows us to create the world that we want to be living into. And this is a world of equity, a world where all people are cared for and not disenfranchised, where all people have equal opportunity, where we live collectively together. So this is a big vision, and you can hold it, and we can live it into the future together. And what it means is re-educating ourselves on the very deepest levels, because the prejudices that we hold not just racially. The prejudices that we hold, and I've said this, I said it yesterday, are often invisible. The things, the conversations that are in our heads that just show up. I I have to say that living in this culture, there are dialogues or phrases that have occurred in my own mind, that horrify me, that I'm like, where did that come from? That's not mine. That's not my thought. That's not my vision. That's not my um, my orientation. And yet there are things like slurs or and I'm not just speaking racially. I'm speaking about, prejudices against all kinds of people, judgments against people that are automatic, that aren't reflective of my heart, that are playing in my brain. And when I hear them, I'm horrified. And so in that moment, if you recognize this internal dialogue that isn't yours, call it out for yourself and say, I choose this thought. I choose this sentiment. I choose this action rather than allowing whatever programming is in there somehow from your childhood or from TV or from wherever it's from. Let's uproot it. And Sally De La Rosa says, love this vision. Thank you, Sally. Yes, we have the ability to create. We have the mandate. We have to. We get to. We're blessed to create a new world where we live together, and it takes each and every one of us to come forward and speak it. So Dido, thank you so much for putting in the link for how to be an anti-racist in the chat here or in the comments. I'm listening to the book. I invite you to listen to it with me. Um, I would venture to say that in our culture, we cannot help, no matter our color, but be racist. And what I mean by that is have certain notions about people based on race, and whether those notions are good or bad, thinking one group is better than another group, or one group has certain traits. And we tend to say that these things are truths, rather than these things are prejudices. And so propagating peace, coming back around to that on a personal level. Yes, there are things that we can do outwardly in the world, and it's an inner game. And so, one of the things that we can be doing is practices of forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others. But let's start with forgiveness of self. And that is like when we recognize these prejudices that we have, to identify it, to forgive ourselves, to regenerate actively and consciously new perspectives. Sally says, I've been saying that all of this racial uprisings are to show us parts of ourselves that still need to heal from all of this. And that is 100% true. And so throughout the COVID epidemic, I've spoken a lot about the gifts that it brings to us and how it made us pause and hopefully reassess our priorities and our actions, and um, to really look at our values and what's important in the world and how we want to move forward rather than going back to business as usual. And now we have the opportunity, through the unrest that is currently occurring, to bring ourselves conscious and to educate ourselves and to re-educate ourselves, to re-indoctrinate ourselves, to be having conversations, to be finding the place within ourselves of peace and connection and love and compassion, so that rather than operating from an assumption or a paradigm of other and separation, we instead put our focus and attention on how deeply we're connected and how the injury to another is an injury to myself. And therefore, I want to end the circumstances that result in such injury, because it does impact me. And I I would venture to say that, we've all heard of the butterfly effect, and how the movement of the wing of the butterfly in on one side of the world impacts possibly a storm system on the other side of the world. And we are in the midst of a storm, and this is a good thing. Storms are cleansing, and they can bring destruction in their wake, and they also can bring cleansing. And I think we're seeing both. I think we have an opportunity to use this moment to make this a cleansing storm and to transform our futures together. It's long overdue that we have the dialogue that is emerging now. And perhaps because of COVID, we're in a better place now to really be engaging in this dialogue at this moment. And for people who are consider themselves to be spiritual people, we are called now more than ever to be holding a place of peace, a place of love, in the face of what could be very frightening and is being stoked by some to engender more separation and more fear. We get to make a conscious and deliberate choice. Sally says, absolute love. Yes, this is what we're called to. And we're called to the recognition of, really, if we have and believe that everything is perfect, that the world is that the universe has our back, this is the time to practice that and to move from inspiration and connection. I can't say it enough. I realize I'm repeating myself, but um, I I just call upon us all to engage in dialogue. Let's talk to each other. Let's explore and call out our biases, because I know that when I have heard these things in my head that just showed up, in a circumstance would arise and something would these words in my mind, and I was like, whoa, where did that come from? And there was a deep sense of shame that would show up. And what we get to do right now is to face our shame and face ourselves with a deep, deep honesty, whatever color we are, whatever religion we are, whatever gender we are. Let's look at our biases, our prejudices, and call them out, recognize them in ourselves, grow beyond them. This is a moment that gives us an unprecedented opportunity for personal and cultural and community growth. Sally says, fear is feeding our demise. Feed it love. Yes, it's all about love. And if you are a spiritually oriented person, you're holding the frequency of love now is more important than ever. So with that, I'm gonna wrap up today. I'm sorry for the halting start, and I hope that you stick with me and just give this the thought and attention that it deserves. Let's use this moment to create a new world with love, deep compassion for you. I am so grateful to have you join me here. I'm here on weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern, and please check out the wonderful programming on Enlightened World Network. Sally says, yes, Mira, same here. The backlash of shame after saying something, even in our minds, is a strong lesson. So even though I'm signing off, Sally, you're so right. Like there has been so much to um, be ashamed of that we need to heal in ourselves with forgiveness, in others with forgiveness. It's only by facing that shame and moving through the other side to the that we get to move to the other side of it. And so with that, I'm going to close today. Sally, thanks so much for being an active participant in today's conversation. Lots of love.